Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 73. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show, who has shared it with coaches, athletes, and people who generally would love this information and hear from these people. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also, want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next project. From racks, barbells, and plates to dumbbells, benches, flooring, storage, and more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to use promo code strength_game at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at cerberusstrength.com. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Coach Haley Roberts. Haley is an assistant strength conditioning coach at Sam Houston State University, where she works with the Bearkats softball, women's basketball, soccer, tennis, and bowling team, in addition to assisting with football. She also is responsible for their internship recruitment program and development. She came to Sam Houston in 2021 after previously serving as a graduate assistant strength coach at the University of North Alabama. Prior to that, she served as the lead intern with the football strength staff at UNLV from 2019 to 2020, as well as served as a virtual intern with the Clemson basketball program. Roberts competed in multiple sports growing up before finding strength sports. She now trains in powerlifting and completed her first competition, picking up a first place podium finish and nationals invite in as many competitions. I'm excited to have her on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Haley Roberts. What's going on, everybody? Today I have new friend, new colleague. We've got Coach Haley Roberts on the show. How you doing? How's Texas weather?
Good. It's ridiculously hot. I mean, I'm from Vegas and I'm used to the heat, but like it's a different kind of heat. This humidity is something different.
Oh yeah. I thought Fresno, like Central Valley, like
Yeah.
all that desert heat was kind of brutal just to run in or just to breathe in. But getting back to a humid state in Florida, and it doesn't get quite as hot as Texas, uh, I kind of miss having drier clothes for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I was in Alabama and I remember for a year and I remember like going down there and everyone's like, it's so humid, it gets so hot. And really the summer wasn't too terrible. But yeah, coming to Texas, like it's pretty hot. Like it feels like I'm back in Vegas, but
Oh yeah.
like depending on the humidity, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, and I know you guys are outside all the time because you've got a lot on your plate with all the teams you're working with and assisting with football and everything. And we'll get into all that stuff a little bit later, but really want to start out how you got involved in the strength game, what kind of sports you played growing up, and then leading into what you just did pretty recently was your first powerlifting meet.
Yeah, so when I was really young, honestly, I'm very sure my parents wanted a girly girl. And the second I could walk, they put me in like dance classes. And so there's like these cute little home recorded videos of me sucking my thumb on stage at 2 years old. And from there, I got into gymnastics. Like they had really low level gymnastics at the dance studio that I was at. And so I started doing that. And then I decided that I wanted to take gymnastics more seriously. So I went to another gym, and that was, slightly higher level. And they started like I had zero upper body strength, come to find out. And couldn't do, like, bars weren't it for me. Vault was really difficult for me. Like, I mean, tumbling wasn't bad, and beam wasn't too bad, but the half the events were pretty difficult. So they had started a competitive cheer team, and I decided that I wanted to try it out. And so I did both for a little bit, but with competitive cheer, you got to travel. And so I chose competitive cheer over gymnastics, did that for 10 years. Um, so I started around when I was 8, and I did it all throughout high school, graduated high school, and I had some, like, on and off mental block is what they call it. But basically, like, I got in my own head with tumbling, and that was what I was good at. And so the last 2 years were really hard on me mentally. Like I'd hide from coaches and be like, I can't do that today. Like I just got in my own head basically. I fell once my sophomore. I fell once, like when I first started tumbling, and I think that was always in the back of my mind. And then I fell again when I didn't hurt myself. It was nothing crazy. Like when I was really little, and I initially hurt my like fell. I rug burned my face, and when you're 6, like that's pretty significant. But when I got to high school and I fell again, I didn't hurt myself, but I think it just brought it back up, and it made me realize that, oh shoot, I can hurt myself doing this. And so my last 2 years really struggled with tumbling mentally. So I graduated high school, and I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. I picked up swimming in high school. I swam all 4 years, and I really did it honestly just for a varsity letter, but turns out I wasn't too terrible at it. I was more of a sprinter. I swam 50 free and 100 fly. The first time I swam 100 fly, it looked like I was drowning. Like there's actual video, and it looks like I'm drowning in the middle of the pool. But it got a lot better, and I ended up qualifying for regionals, and I think I ended up top 10 for both events. Three years out of the 4. Got another letter, and same thing. Like I just got bored of swimming. It wasn't my true passion. My true passion was competitive cheer. So I graduated and decided I was going to get a job and work. And I thought I wanted to do physical therapy, and so got into just got a job, started going to school, got my undergrad or for undergrad, and then I got bored. Like I needed something to do. Going from doing something from a young age to doing nothing, I found myself really bored. Um, and I got really into weightlifting. Fall after I gained my freshman 15, of course, but got really into weightlifting, started watching my nutrition, and everything I did and knew was self-taught, up until I started interning with, it was right before I started interning with UNLV football. And I met up with a powerlifting coach, and I wanted to get into powerlifting. And honestly, like he kind of refined, my coach at the time kind of refined my lifts. I did it before I got in powerlifting. I did a couple bodybuilding shows, took those off my social media, not exactly strength coach appropriate, but yeah, did 4 of those, and then I decided that being strong was way cooler than having abs, and I've just kind of stuck with it. Finally, did my first meet, but that's kind of how I got to where I'm at now in strength and conditioning and powerlifting.
No, that's awesome. It's cool to see everybody's trajectory and see where all the little different things along the way kind of added up to get to the point you currently are at. Like I didn't know you did bodybuilding as well, and there's definitely plenty of coaches out there that have gone that route. Or I mean, we use a lot of bodybuilding techniques in pretty much everything we're doing, and whatever you want to call it, body armor or just general hypertrophy work for especially for football or some of those contact sports. So it's definitely probably a useful tool just as much as gymnastics and swimming and all the different things like competitive cheer, all those different things and attributes that you learn along the way. are definitely probably helpful now for powerlifting. I do want to like touch on, because obviously like you talked about it already. You went from kind of getting bored and physical therapy undergrad, like just kind of going that trajectory, and then started getting involved with a powerlifting coach before UNLV. But like kind of going back to that mental block and like stuff that you talked about when you were like doing competitive cheer, has that kind of popped up again in any of the other sports that, like, reflecting back, that, or maybe have you found another way to kind of being older and getting more experience that have kind of given you a different avenue of addressing that if it's ever popped up multiple times?
So like the mental block itself, the only other time I've experienced it, and I'm pretty sure this is why, like, I don't want to say I'm terrible at them because they look good when I do them, but Olympic lifts. I get in my own head. Like I'll put the most I've cleaned is 165 and I'm catching it up tall. But I like if I put any more weight on the bar, I'm gonna get in my own head. Same with snatch. Like I've never snatched over 95 pounds. And it's not necessarily because I'm not strong enough. It's I get in my own head and I just won't commit to it. And I've yet to find a way to combat that, to be totally honest with you. With the three main movements in powerlifting, squat, bench, and deadlift, like I know I can fail and I'm not gonna hurt myself. And that's kind of like the safety blanket for me because with a snatch and a clean, I feel like there's so much more that could go wrong. Like I could end up with the bar on my neck, you know? And so like if I start thinking about like if I'm doing Olympic lifts, if I start thinking about it too much, I either have to step away and come back, like take my mind off of it and come back. But if I start to like get into a place where I'm doing too many reps, like I'll start thinking about the movement and how I need to improve this and improve that. And like this is the same thing when I did competitive cheer. If I like didn't think about the skill that I was about to execute, I wouldn't have any issue executing it. If it was something that was relatively quick, I wouldn't think too much about it, or I would try not to think too much about it. And that's typically when I was able to execute the skill. And same thing with Olympic lifting. I do it with some athletes now. They'll start to think about certain things, and you can see it. Like I know what it looks like because like I had the same look on my face, but you can see that they're thinking about what they need to do for each thing. And so like with Olympic lifting, anytime I teach it, like we definitely segment it, but I've also noticed too, whenever you go back to it the next time, it's ingrained a little bit better and they're not thinking nearly as much. Like I don't think when I go up to the bar and do a clean pull. I don't think when I go up to the bar and do a high pull. But if you know, like you're going up to the bar and you're catching for the first time, you have to think about executing that movement versus it just being second nature. And so I think that's probably something that I could combat if I train them more. But truthfully, I don't do a ton of Olympic lifting in my own personal training. Um, I did for a little bit, and then I hurt my back, and it didn't. We stopped. We obviously stopped lifting. We were in denial for about 6 months about that, but yeah. And then I got into powerlifting, and like I said, being like it was cooler because I was already strong with those lifts or semi-strong with those lifts versus Olympic lifting where I had to work my way back up.
Right. No, it's an interesting point. Like I asked because like there's a lot of obviously elite level powerlifters and everything that, and or other people in different strength sports that would say powerlifting is not as technical. But I mean, I'd still argue there's a lot of technique and there's precision that goes into all the intricacies of walking out a squat or waiting to pause on the bench, and like just getting grooving a pattern if you're in like gear or things like that. And it's definitely different than Olympic lifting or different strength sports or competitive cheer. But to like get to the point where you've have experience in it and you're still finding ways to overthink, like it's just common things that I think a lot of athletes in general, or like sometimes coaches forget that athletes are going to experience that even if you've been competing in cheer for 10 years. Like it's still something,
Yeah.
like those mental blocks happen. Like people talk about it for like Major League Baseball when like pitchers get the yips and
Right.
they're just kind of stuck in a rut. And it's real. I think it's different for everybody how they kind of attack that mental block and really try to get past it. So
For
it's
sure.
interesting to see when you've had experience in all these different like adventure, like different sports to get it in one and not get it in another, especially with
Yeah.
one where you had a lot of experience. So no, that's cool. When you were so when you started getting and you were preparing for kind of physical therapy and started working and everything, finding a powerlifting coach, what kind of shifted your focus away from maybe continuing to pursue physical therapy, or did like a newfound love for like strength conditioning just kind of overtake that and then lead you to your first internship with football at UNLV?
So like I said, went into college with the mindset that I was going to go physical therapy. Like that was what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in athletics. Growing up, I was a really big like football fan, and nobody else in my family was. The way I became a football fan was my dad just found any excuse to throw a party, really, and he had a Super Bowl party, and it was the Steelers and the Seahawks Super Bowl, and I picked the Steelers, and I just kind of rocked with it. And from there, like I mean, everything else was kind of self-taught. My grandpa watched football, um, and we both had like an equal hatred for the Dallas Cowboys. We were never Cowboys fans, and we hated that they played every Thanksgiving. So I remember I remember we were watching it, and like that was something that we came together with. He didn't have a team that he chose over the other, but he just didn't like the Cowboys. um, and so yeah, no, like I mean, I watched football growing up, and like the mindset was like, okay, I'm going to be a physical therapist for a sports team. And the more I went to school for it, like my undergrad's in kinesiology, but I went to school and like towards the halfway through, I'd say my undergrad, there's people that come into our classes and they're like, oh yeah, like if you want to go to physical therapy school, it's these hours to these hours, like here's information on it. And, they just kind of preface you to it. And they're like, yeah, like the requirements, you have to have so many hours in a PT clinic. And so I started reaching out to different clinics, and like I went into one and I was like, this is just really clinical. I don't think this is for me. It's just really quiet, really clinical. I didn't enjoy dealing or working with the general population. Um, and I was like, maybe personal training, maybe that'll be different. And so that was while I was going to school, I worked full time um, at a supplement store, and then I worked part time as a personal trainer at a commercial gym. And in both places, both settings, I'm working with the general population, and it was just different. Coming from a place, I'm really hard on myself, and I think that's honestly why I overthought and still overthink the way that I lift or my tumbling or whatever it is. Like I'm really hard on myself. And I couldn't understand why people didn't want to get better. And I can't force someone to come to the gym. I don't have that level of patience. I don't have that level of sympathy. Like those are your choices. Sorry. And I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't it either. And so I ran into a former classmate. He played baseball at UNLV. And he was like, well, he's like, what do you plan on doing after you graduate? Like, I think I had one more year left. And I was like, honestly, I'm really not sure. Um, Physical therapy is not it. Personal training's not it. And he's like, well, have you thought about strength conditioning? And like, I stopped playing sports in high school. So I didn't realize like I never had a strength coach. That was never, I mean, I had a powerlifting coach, but I never referred to him as a strength coach. And I didn't know that was a thing. So I started listening to different podcasts with strength coaches on them. And one of the first ones I listened to was Corey Schlesinger, and I think I said his last name right. If I didn't, my bad. But he was with Stanford basketball at the time. Now he's with the Phoenix Suns. But I listened to the podcast, followed him on social media. He followed me back, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, yo, he's a celebrity. He just followed me. And so I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I think I want to get into strength conditioning. Like, what do I do? And he was like, get an internship. He's like, that's going to be the only way you're going to know if that's what you want to do. And so I reached out because I was already at UNLV. I reached out to the Olympic staff and I reached out to the football staff. And I got offered both. And I ended up going with the football strength conditioning internship. And I was like, yep, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is awesome. And so here we are.
That's awesome. No, I think it's cool to see in the beginning, like obviously I went through the same path. I think a lot of coaches, a lot of people in athletic training, maybe in physical therapy, anybody that's kind of in the athletic side, oftentimes people get discouraged to pick one route, or they're dead set on a certain route, and they
Right.
start going through school, and like you realize all the work that goes in place, and sometimes that's a deterrence already, but oftentimes I think people realize that what they saw as the end goal isn't necessarily like that doesn't fit for them anymore. Like I wanted to do
Right.
athletic training, and I like it was, to me it was kind of fun. I shadowed someone at community college, and I was like, I'm around the guys, like this atmosphere is kind of cool, but then I never saw the paperwork and some of the other bullshit, and then I found out strength conditioning was there, and I was like, all right, this is way better. And so that's cool for you to actually go through, like put the time in while you're doing undergrad and work at the supplement shop, and then go do some of the clinics and everything, and just kind of go down the list and be like, no, not this one, not this one, not this one. And then
Right.
finally find one that really clicks and then stick with it. I think people put a lot of emphasis on picking one and not realizing that there's multiple options. Like physical therapy, you could be in athletics, but like you didn't like that either, didn't like the gen pop, like you could still be a
Right.
coach in a different aspect. So it's good to get those experiences out of the way and really hone in on the one you like. And internships and shadowing and stuff like that is definitely the best place to do it. And like what you did, reach out to other coaches to kind of get their input and ask what's the normal path to kind of go on.
Right. Yeah. Like that was a thing for me getting into strength and conditioning. I was really naive to a lot of different things. Like, I mean, I had no idea really how the profession worked. Like, I've never been someone that's afraid to ask a question or to like speak up and say something. And so, I mean, if like the worst case scenario, he just wouldn't have responded. I would have probably found another coach and reached out and been like, hey, how do I do this? Like, do you enjoy your job? Because that was a big thing for me. Like when I was in college, I didn't want to. There were so many people that like I went to high school with and went to college with, and yeah, they were making good money out of school, but like they hated their job. Or like looking at my parents, like my mom loves being a dental assistant, but like I mean, she complains about it all day long. Like like I can promise you, she'd much rather stay home. Or my dad, like he's self-employed and doesn't have any sort of retirement. Um, and he like complains now, like he's like, yeah, I wish I would have gone a different route and like gone to school. I was the first one in my family to graduate with a bachelor's. And I'll probably be the first, possibly the only, to graduate with a master's. Um, but yeah, it was more for me, it was more about the enjoyment. Like if I'm gonna get up and do this every day, I want to absolutely enjoy what I do or love what I do. And strength and conditioning was that. Like interning, if I was interning, I was working full time and I was finishing school. And honestly, if I didn't absolutely love it, I wouldn't have been able to commit to those hours. So I think that was part of it too, just enjoying what I was doing and having fun with it made it a lot
No,
easier.
yeah, exactly. I think that's why there's so much debate nowadays. Like I've been in the profession a little bit longer than you, so I've seen the discussion boards and just like the normal talks at conferences and just the chalk talks behind the scenes of everybody talking about internships and pain and volunteers and all those sort of things. But without those things, I don't know if you really solidify that you want to be in this profession. And
Right.
I tell my interns all the time, like the number, the two biggest questions you're going to actually be able to answer by the end of this internship or at some point in time during this is, can I do this job? And do I actually love doing this job? Because if you
Right.
can't answer yes to both of those, then there's probably nothing we can do after this point. And you might not be able to do it initially, but if you can't answer the second one, if you don't love it, number one, then it's a matter of being able to do it or not. It doesn't matter because as we kind of know, and everybody knows in this profession, like it'll eat you up and spit you out. And there's not a lot of people that retire in it, and there's not a lot of people that make a whole lot of money in it, and there's a lot of people that don't have much time outside of it. So if, like you said, if you don't really enjoy what you're doing, then you should probably pick something different.
Yeah. I mean, I tell our interns the same thing. And I think, like, I know, like you said, there's been talks of like, oh, we don't make enough, or oh, we should get rid of unpaid internships. But I mean, honestly, if you can't commit to, like, I mean, between interning and working, like, I'm working 12 to 14 hours a day, 12 to 16 hours a day. And like, if you're not willing to put forth that time, then you're not going to make it. Like you said, you're not going to make it, you know? And then being able to put time now, I need to do a better job of that. But like being able to put time off to the side for yourself, like you have to get really good at managing your time. Like again, as an intern, I was in class and interned and working. And so like if your schedule's not solidified, like it's gonna be really hard. Like I used to love going on our chartered trips because I'm like, cool, how long is this one? 4 hours? I'm sleeping the entire time. Um, but I mean, like now I need, like I said, I need to do a better job of prioritizing time for myself because like I love what I do and I'm like, okay, I have to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this, you know? And it's not like I'm looking at it as a job. It's something that I want to do, you know? But yeah, I think for me it's been difficult giving myself that self-care time versus, you know, like wanting to be involved with whatever we have going on.
Right. No, that I think that's a hard balance, I think, for everybody in different places, different situations, or different times in your career. There's going to be some ebbs and flows, obviously, to the season, and there's going to be some times where like your passion and your dedication and commitment to the profession is going to come into question. I think, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I've gone through that, just being like tossed around and going through like 16-hour days continuously all the time, all the travel. Um,
Yeah.
but if you can remember why you really got into it and like see the positives out of it, I think that's helpful. But you're right, like finding ways to kind of re-energize yourself. um, I know we ask those questions to interns and fellow coaches all the time, like what do you do outside of these four walls? And it can't just
Right.
be training, it has to be something else.
Yeah.
Because like I want to be able to hang out with my coaching staff and talk to them and like hear more about what they think about like the latest strength conditioning book or periodization. There's a lot more to it, and I think that stuff helps keep people in the profession longer too, rather than just being a one trick pony where all you do is live, eat, sleep, breathe training all the time. There's got to be a little bit more, because that's a lot of the conversations you're going to have with athletes too. It's going to be what you guys are doing outside of training. Not all of them like live that life the same way. So you got to be able to
Right.
relate in them and have some time for yourself too.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, if I'm telling them like, okay, you guys need to better manage your time, or like you guys need to eat healthy, you got like if I'm doing if I'm preaching all these different things, like I feel like I should practice them. You need to sleep 8 hours, and I'm not sleeping 8 hours. I finally like got to Sam, and that was probably the first point in my career where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can be in bed by 7:30. Like, I mean, granted, I come home, walk the dog, eat, and then I'm in, like shower and go to bed. But like that's something that I'm finally able to do. Like I can usually get 7 to 8 hours of sleep and actually practice what I'm preaching. But up to this point, I mean, I haven't had that luxury. I've had another job in some way, shape, or form. But I mean, it's been well worth it, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything.
Yeah, I think, like you said, internships kind of set a precedence in some way. It's not going to be forever that you're going to kind of be the main person cleaning, or you're not going to have some of the other responsibilities that other coaches do. But if you do the internship the right way and you're doing everything, you're learning from the coaches, like you're developing those relationships, you learn how to program, you learn how to coach, you learn how to train. Like you learn what the profession is on a daily basis with kind of with a safety net. And
Right.
if you really enjoy it, then you keep working towards it. Then yeah, some of those freedoms kind of come back, but it's a rite of passage that I think shouldn't be taken away because like I mean you're a testament to it. Like you went through kind of the ringer and now you're in one of those positions where you actually get to now work with interns and everything yourself. So kind of
Right.
thinking back, what are maybe some of the bigger, lesser known lessons that you kind of had to undergo as you transition to more of a full-time coaching role that maybe you weren't prepared for, it didn't really understand was something like a full-time strength coach would do as you were a GA or as you were an intern that now like in your role that you have to do a lot more often?
Um, that's kind of a tough one because when I was an intern, like I had really great mentors as an intern, and I remember one of them. It was Diamond Simmons, so shout out to him. He's at UCLA now, but he was with UNLV football at the time. And I remember he told me, he's like, whatever position you're in now, he goes, how prepare yourself the way you would for the next position, or act the way you would be in your next position. Um, at the time I was a head intern and I wanted to get a GA position. And so being a head intern, a GA, with the exception of going to grad school, they're very similar things. And I just kind of kept with that mindset, kept with that mentality. Towards the end of my internship, I was really struggling mentally to keep everything together because there was really no end in sight. Like I didn't know when I was going to get my next break or my next couple days off. I was still working full time. I wasn't in school anymore, but I had a hard time landing a GA position in the middle of COVID. And like it got tough mentally. Like, I mean, nobody on staff knew about it by any means. But like I had probably two or three breakdowns. like I remember I'd go to on break at my other job and be like, I don't want to clock back in. Like I'm over this. I'm just so overworking 7 days a week. Um, but I mean, thankfully, like a couple weeks later, I was offered a GA position, and so it's just kind of crazy how things work out sometimes. But going from an intern to a GA, the biggest thing there was programming because working with football, there's not a whole lot of programming that an intern's going to get exposed to. Like you can ask questions, but at the same time, it's different implementing your own programming versus following and implementing someone else's. And I tell interns that now, like ask as many questions as you can and ask questions of like different staff members because I'm going to train differently than Coach Parker is, and Coach Parker's going to train differently than Coach Trevor is. And so seeing those different ways of coaching and different ways of programming is just going to better them if they ask enough questions. But with football, it's one staff, and it's one program essentially. So the only programming I got exposed to prior to getting a GA position was with our injured guys. They were like, all right, these are our injured group. We need their heart rate up because we're out there doing 8 station, 4 station. And I'm like, okay, well, I got this guy that has a back injury, this guy that has an arm injury, this guy has, and so trying to maneuver that was pretty difficult, but it was also good experience. And that was my entry to programming. When I got to North Alabama as a GA, I feel like I did a lot more reading as a GA, and a lot more self-discovery as a GA than I did as an intern, because I was actually put in the position where I need to program. And so like I had to figure out what's my training philosophy going to be. How am I going to train and these athletes in front of me? How am I going to create buy-in? How am I going to get the interns that are here to help me set up? Um, what responsibilities am I going to give them? How am I going to run the room? And so those are things that I took on as a GA, but I don't feel like it was a really hard transition, if that makes sense. It was a lot of new things, but I don't think I struggled a ton with it. Like I kept the panic inside my head, and like on the outside, we were calm, we were ready to go. And so like we just programmed, and I feel like I got to experiment. My head guy at North Alabama, he let me experiment with the programs, and we'd have conversations about them. And like I said, there wasn't a time where he was like, that doesn't sound like sound. Um, so it kind of worked because again, I got to see what works, what doesn't. I got to experiment with different types of training. We didn't have any crazy technology there, so there wasn't a whole lot of the sports science stuff. I got to solely focus on programming and keeping it simple, which a lot of coaches talk about. I've heard I feel like I hear more coaches say keep it simple than not. It doesn't take, for a lot of athletes, it doesn't take crazy training modalities or different tech or different, like come in, correctly periodize, like manage load, um, and go on from there. But when I got to my assistant position, like at North Alabama, there were other things that I picked up. I took on our internship program and kind of revamped it and set it up. And it was really kind of weird because I felt like I was just an intern, and here I am leading our internship program. And so it was a little surreal and a little full circle. And the way that I kind of set it up was things that I wish I had when I was an intern. Like I didn't pass my CSCS the first time. I'm gonna be quite transparent with it. Um, I remember I told the staff, because we had one of our stations and we needed 4 stations. We had 3 full-time people on staff, and so I had my own station. We're talking about it in the meeting in our like little huddle before, and I was like, "Hey, I take my CSCS tomorrow," and they were like, "Okay, cool." And then we start talking about training for the following day, and they're like, "Oh, you're taking your CSCS. We got 4 stations." And like the workout was at 9, my CSCS was at noon, and they were like, "Well, do you mind coming in to coach before?" And I was like, "No, it's fine." And I definitely went in underprepared, but that was something that I worked into our internship program. Like I added more CSCS prep kind of stuff. And then since getting to Sam, I've taken it out. I've revamped it again. But it's just I that's how I started, was things that I wish I had as an intern. I also took on the task of ordering like clothes for the staff. And I remember I'm sitting there, I'm going through the Adidas website, and I'm like, "Hey Steve, what do you think about this?" Or like asking the other GAs, I'm like, "What do you think about this?" And they're like, "Yeah, it looks fine." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." Like, thanks for the input, guys. Like they didn't care. So but that was another thing that I'd taken on there. And so my biggest thing everywhere that I've been so far is I've tried to add value wherever I'm at. Like I want my former boss to call me and be like, "It is, one, it's so different without you, and two, like there's so much more that we need to do without you here." And that's kind of how I've tried to leave UNLV and tried to leave North Alabama. And then coming to Sam, that was probably it. The biggest transition there wasn't necessarily facilitating my teams. Yeah, I have a few more teams than I had at North Alabama, but the biggest thing there was coming into such a seasoned staff. Like Trevor's had 10 plus years of experience, and Parker's been in strength and conditioning for I think 16 or 17. So I'm like, there's so much more experienced than I am. What am I possibly going to add to this staff? And so that's really that was the hardest thing for me coming in, was what value could I possibly add to these guys? Like they know everything. And so my contribution has kind of been, I've added some wellness surveys. here, and Trevor's not really the sports science type, but he's he's gotten more into it. Taught him how to graph on Excel. Apparently, I didn't think I was an Excel guru, and honestly, if anyone's listening and they're really good at Excel, like you're probably better than I am. So just to preface, but like apparently I'm, the Excel guru on staff. Like unofficially I'm the director of sports science. But Trevor just makes up titles. We have an unofficial director of social media and an unofficial assistant director of social media. So, but that was the hardest thing, was trying to figure out what I'm going to add. We started doing wellness surveys, and all the teams kind of fill it out. It's a QR code. They scan it, and we ask them how many times they ate, how do they feel their nutrition was, how sore they are, how much stress they feel from academics. Um, there's other questions that we ask through it, but another component is like tackling mental health. Like I had a few athletes come to me with some mental health concerns, and it's just trying to figure out like, okay, we don't have a plan in place. Like what's the proper procedure? We don't have someone on staff that's trained to and qualified to speak to these athletes. Like where do I send them? Like I knowing this, I don't want to just let it go and hope it fixes itself. And so that was another addition to the staff. But outside of that, yeah, they still have far more training experience than I do, and I pick their brain as much as I possibly can. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, why do you have that in there? Where did you get this from? And then, yeah, I mean, like just the bantering back and forth, like just creating more competition in the workplace is another addition. But yeah, I think those are probably the biggest transitions, going place to place thus far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. We talked a little bit before we got going too, creating some competition. You guys have an in-house powerlifting meet
We
for the
do.
strength staff, and even some of the sport coaches getting involved in that. So,
We
no,
do.
stuff like that is awesome to kind of get more people in athletics involved and add value as a department as well as like as an individual too. And yeah, it's one thing to have a lot of experience like the coaches like Trevor and the rest of the staff there have, but I think everybody coming in, whether you're an intern, you're a volunteer, you're a full-time, you're a new director, everybody has some value to add. And it's nice to really be able to solidify those things and understand like where people's strengths lie or where people's passion lies within the profession. Because you don't want to hire like-minded people all the time. You don't want just 10
Right.
versions of yourself. If you really want to get the best out of a department of coaches, because now everybody has more and more like like increasing staff size is one of the biggest things that everybody across the country is trying to do. And I think
Right.
it helps to have genuine conversations and relationships with your athletes and be more manageable, like coach to athlete ratio. But I think more people also realize that athletes talk to coaches differently and they have those different relationships. So if you keep hiring the same types of people, you're probably losing a lot of those athletes in the shuffle. So yeah,
Right.
you definitely bring a lot of stuff to the table that is different than the rest of your guys' staff, and adding value in those ways is super important. But I think you said something really cool about like when you were talking about North Alabama and knowing kind of what happens when you leave and the value that you actually brought when you leave. I think most people don't realize the value that they actually have,
Yeah.
and to be kind of like an irreplaceable person or to realize the impact that you actually made at a place usually doesn't happen until you go. So it's nice to
Yeah.
kind of reflect on that stuff or whatever it is, like go through, get an attaboy or just kind of think about that stuff because it is important. And then you can double down on those things that you really excel at too, and add more to the staff and add more to kind of your coaching resume as you go.
Yeah, definitely. Like I mean, I keep in touch with all my previous employers, but I remember when I first got to North Alabama, one of the assistants, Brandon Coach Garcia at UNLV, he reached like we were talking on the phone one day, and he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "We hired another female intern, and he's like, she's just not. It's just not the same. It's not Haley." And so I mean, like, it's unfortunate for the next intern, but like it's awesome for me to hear that like no one's lived up to that standard. Or like they had a so during COVID, again, kind of sort of how I got into powerlifting. I was prepping for a meet, and because of COVID, the meet didn't happen. And so when I was at UNLV, they knew that, and we did the same thing, an in-house powerlifting meet. And it's something like they've done it the last 2 years, like even after I was gone. And I remember last year there was they had an intern, and like I reached out to Coach Garcia, and I was like, hey, listen, like his deadlift's it's a little low. Like you might want to tell him. And he's like, yeah, he goes, we were harassing him all day, just telling him that Haley's stronger than him. And he's like, I don't even know who Haley is. Like, like, so it's awesome to hear just, like places that I haven't even been to in years, like my name's still being brought up around the building. And even with athletes, like I still have athletes that reach out to me. And I think that's probably the biggest impact is with the athletes. I mean, I've cried everywhere that I've left. And like I still keep in touch with my volleyball girls at North Alabama. There's still football players that reached out to me after I left North Alabama and reached out for advice, just reached out to see how I was doing. And like if they transferred or if they graduated, like I'd still reach out and say congrats. Or like if I know a coach somewhere, I'm like, hey, like this person's great. Like there was someone that got an offer to Delaware, and their coaches used to be over here at Sam, and I was like, oh, he's like, that coach is awesome, whatever. Like if you end up going there, you're gonna love it. But just being able to make those relationships with both like the people around me and our student athletes, because that's what we're here to do, make impressions. It's awesome to hear those, and after you leave, of course, because you don't realize it in the moment, but it's awesome to hear those things still going on after the fact.
Yeah, those are pretty cool things, especially to hear the impact even when you're not there anymore. And that's
Yeah.
I had a few of my old baseball players like at Fresno State. Like I saw them get drafted. So I was texting them a little bit last weekend and like congratulate them because I remember having them through the ringer for the first few years and kind of like see their progress, and they're checking up and they're asking how everything's going too. So
Right.
those things are awesome to kind of see because it prioritizes what's really important, I think, in the profession. And yeah, you have to understand the science and the X's and O's and training and everything like that. But at the end of the day, like it's about the relationships we're building. You're trying to get people to do like to train and to do hard things. And
Right.
if you don't have those soft skills, you can't actually relate to athletes and make an impression and make an impact with them in those moments, then they're probably not reaching out to you later on. If
Yeah.
especially if your head's in the clouds and all you're thinking is training, 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 and it's just a means to an end, and you kind of push them out the door. So it's a great reminder, and hopefully like the same as anybody else that gets those kind of like text messages or phone calls or like sees kind of that good news, that's a great motivator to realize like really why you got into the profession for sure.
Yeah.
So,
It's awesome.
and so when you first got going, um, obviously like you worked like your first team interning at like the collegiate level was working with football, and you've had football along the way, assisting in different capacities as well as a bunch of other teams too. Um, has there been like I like to ask this one because this helps me because I'm not ever going to be in the situation. Has there been any like struggles or roadblocks, especially being like a female strength coach in kind of a male dominated industry like strength coaching, and especially with football because it is like 99.9999, whatever it is, like, or 100% of football players are men. So it's a very different aspect. And there's been a lot of changes like in pro football and college and like just strength conditioning in general. But like in your experience, has there been anything like that? And is there any way of kind of improving the situation for like coaches like me that are in a hiring capacity or trying to bring on female coaches that we can kind of do better like moving forward?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned before, when I got into strength conditioning, I was really naive to a lot of different things. And not one of those things was actually like how rare it was that women worked in college football. And like you said, it's becoming widely accepted or a little bit more accepted with pro football. I don't think it's hit higher level collegiate football yet. Um, Notice I said yet. I definitely think it's on its way, but I coming in with that really naive mindset, I didn't realize that there was a disparity. I didn't realize that women were a minority. I mean, there's not a ton of interns. There was three of us. And then the second time around, I was the only intern for a little bit. And then we hired some more interns on. And yeah, I was the only female intern, but like if there's only four or five of us, I didn't notice that necessarily as a disparity. Um, I think the first time I really noticed it was anytime we like the first couple times we traveled, I traveled with them and like I had to be the first one in the locker room and the first one like first one to change, first one there. I got to set up things, but like I can't be in the locker room for a good majority of our pregame stuff. And so like I still had a hook. Like our equipment manager was awesome. Like I still had a hook in there. And like I still had my stuff hung up, but it wasn't like I didn't have my there was only one spot actually, and I'm pretty sure it was Fresno that I had my own cute little locker room. Like it was like I don't even know what the locker room was for, but it was like a separate locker room inside the bigger locker room. Um, and yeah, I mean, outside of that place, like I had to be the first one in and first one out. And I got really, really lucky in being able to intern with staffs that have been widely accepting to women in football or women in sports in general. Um, like when I got to North Alabama, I think probably there were a few football coaches that didn't seem too fond of me working with football, but I mean, I definitely had a lasting impression on those guys. Like I said, I still have guys that reach out to me from that exact team. And so I think realistically, that was what was important. I wasn't really concerned with thoughts that coaches had. I know my boss had my back, and again, I'm there for the athletes at the end of the day, so their opinion was really irrelevant. But I can't say I've faced a ton of disparity, thankfully. I've also not let myself, I guess you could say, be a victim to it. Um, I have a relatively strong personality, and I think a lot of that, a lot of some of those disparities or some of those issues come from like softer, weaker personality types. Um, and I like if someone says something to me that's negative, I'm not gonna say like I'm not just gonna sit there and take it. That's not my personality by any means. Um, so I think a lot of it's how you carry yourself with working with a very, very male heavy population football. Like I think all of our position coaches, most position coaches, there's a few here and there that are females, but like at SAM, all of them are male. We have a couple female um, like dietitian interns. We have a female dietitian. Um, and then we have, I think, a couple females taking like doing media, picture, photography stuff. But outside of that, like when for strength conditioning, I'm the only female on staff. But like I said, I don't have that daintiness to me. Like Trevor said earlier this week that I'm one of the guys. Like we were talking about something. Trevor's like, no, it's fine. Like she's a dude, so it's cool. And I'm like, I mean, like I still get my nails. Well, if I can, I still get my nails done. They're not done right now, so don't look. But um, like, but the way that I carry myself, like I care, but I'm also not super sympathetic. Like I'm really competitive, and ultimately at the end of the day, I just want to be the best person, the best coach, like that I can possibly be, male or female. I think in some cases it's an advantage, like when it comes to hiring, because a lot of staffs need minority hires. And so, like I've had people reach out to me and they're like, hey, like, we have a ton of female teams. We're looking for a female strength coach. Do I think female strength coaches should be limited to female teams? Absolutely not. I think the sometimes challenge of working with male sports is awesome to have. But um, for the most part, like I haven't had any issues with any of the guys that I've worked with, regardless of the program that I've been with. A lot of the guys are really respectful. I personally, as a coach, I don't cuss athletes out. Um, it's a mutual respect thing. If you're gonna talk to me like an adult, I'm gonna talk to you like an adult. And I really don't cuss a whole lot, just in normal conversation. Um, I have a coaching voice, but I don't raise my voice and like go off on people on a regular basis. So if I do, then we know it's something serious, and it usually takes a lot of people or takes the team that I'm working with by surprise. So I think, again, I've been lucky to a certain extent, but I think some of it has come from the way that I've carried myself up to this point. Um, and like I said, I don't think when it comes to hiring that females should just be hired for female sports. But I have seen, like I said, like, hey, we need a female on staff, or we need someone of color on staff, or both. And so like I've had people reach out and like, hey, do you know of a female that's interested in this job, or do you know of someone that would be interested in this job? And I think it kind of works to our benefit in some instances.
Right. No, I think you said it right. And I think it's a blend of what you kind of said. Like you got lucky because you had some great mentors and you had some people that are pretty open-minded and realize that they're not hiring you because you're a female. They're hiring you because of your merit and you're a good coach. And for those reasons, like being a female is just secondary. And that
Right.
might be a bonus if it's a hire, but they're hiring you based off the quality of your work, not just because of what your name is or what your gender is. And that's a good thing. And yeah, like I think like you said, the way you carry yourself and the way that you're able to communicate with everybody on staff and athletes, like regardless of if it's a men's basketball team or a women's basketball team, like that doesn't matter. Like you're coaching people, and you said yourself, like I want to be the best coach, regardless if
Right.
it's male or female. And I think that's a great attitude to have, and that's definitely things that we look at, and I look at specifically, like when I'm looking to hire people. Like I'm looking just to hire the most qualified person, the best person for the job, regardless of what it is. And I think like to what you said in the very beginning, like not yet. Like there's still a lot of growth to be had in this profession, and there's a lot more females than I've seen in my career popping up in the profession as interns or starting to get in full-time jobs or directors. Like I know a bunch of female directors of large universities that like I can't recall too many 10 years ago when I first started. So that's awesome. And to see more progress like that, to see more people like not get spit out and or get shied away of being in the profession and being the only female on staff. That I think that's probably a hard thing to kind of go through and to realize that. But like you said, you're just naive to realize that that happened. And maybe it's that for a lot of coaches, like female coaches, or it's maybe a chance to prove people wrong. But either
Yeah.
way, it's cool to see more and more females get in the profession and like yourself. So that's awesome.
Yeah. no, it's been an awesome experience so far. And like I said, like I feel like I've just gotten really lucky with the people that I've been around. They haven't seen like they're not looking at me as a female on staff, like they're just looking at me as another person on staff, another coach on staff. And so like teams have looked at me the same way. Coaches for the most part. Again, there's been a few football coaches, position coaches here and there, but again, I'm not there for them at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, I've been really lucky, but it's also a mindset going in, that like I just want to be the best at what I do. And that goes back to just me being competitive, like from a young age, like boy, girl, it doesn't matter. Like if I'm gonna race in the playground, I'm gonna win. Like that's it. So
I like it. Yeah, and like that competitive spirit, and I think it helps that like you walk the walk and you train yourself, and you probably build a lot of buy-in and from what the football players and beating out some of the baseball strength coaches or baseball coaches and out deadlifting some of them. And I think that probably fuels the fire a little bit more and adds a little bit of an extra emphasis on hey, I'm here and I can do this sort of stuff. So
yeah.
what for you, like like what really makes you want to continue to train and then ultimately like keep, like you said yourself, you're a competitive person, but like what are some of your goals that you're looking to accomplish in powerlifting, or maybe stuff that you have that you do in powerlifting that kind of helps with your coaching? Is that one of the main emphasis or one of the main drivers why you still want to compete and train?
A little bit. I'm gonna come back a little bit to where you said it kind of creates buy-in with some of the teams. And when I was interning at UNLV, I mean, like I don't feel like I look very strong, if that makes sense. But it's a work in progress. We're gonna fill the sleeves sometime soon. But um, but when I was working with UNLV, like there'd be a few times with different lift groups that like interns would hop in and get the lift with the team, or like the staff would rotate. They'd be like, all right, we're gonna get our lift with this group, we're gonna get our lift with this group. And so I mean, like I had done that a few times, and that creates buy-in because I'm lifting the same weight, for the same reps. Like I'm going through it with them. And it took some of them by surprise. And it was funny because like some of the guys are like, does she need a spot? How do I spot her? Like so that was kind of funny, but um just working alongside of them definitely helps create buy-in. But uh I mean, I train for myself, for my own sanity. Like I said, when I stopped playing sports, I got really into weightlifting because like sports were a way that I could step away from what was going on in that moment. And I found that with lifting, outside of school and outside of working, like I can take this hour and 15 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it was, and just focus on lifting. I don't have to think anything about anything hard. I can just think about the weight on the bar, sitting down, standing up, and so that's kind of how I used weightlifting, and that's what I trying to develop with athletes, like this is the one room on campus that you don't have, like you can leave your worries at the door. And same thing as a coach, like not saying I don't think about, whatever stressors I have going on at the moment, but I try and leave whatever I have going on at the door, like not like that doesn't matter when I step in the weight room, I'm here doing what I absolutely love to do. Um, and whether that's lifting, whether that's coaching, that's the mentality that I try and instill with some of our athletes. And like regardless of what's going on out there, you can come in here and take your mind off of it for an hour and a half. And so for my personal training, I like I said, I got into powerlifting just slowly after bodybuilding. Like after you eat a ton of food, you're like, oh, I'm actually really kind of strong. Like I can lift these weights. And just it was honestly more of a linear progression. I don't even want to know what my first ever squat in a gym looked like. I know it terrified some guy in a leg press so much that he asked if I needed a spot, like not in a creepy way. Like he genuinely looked concerned for my well-being. So I wish I videoed it so I can compare it to what it looks like now. But um yeah, like being under a bar, like if I can't actually do it or perform it, demonstrate it, it's going to be harder for me to teach. And I always tell our interns, like, if you can't perform it, if you don't know why we're doing it, you shouldn't be programming it. And that's kind of what I live by. Like, if I have to get up and demonstrate a power clean while someone, talks through it, that's something that I need to be able to do, and I need to be technically sound with it. And same thing goes with squat, bench, and deadlift. The Like I said, I get bored and I need something to work towards and something to do personally. And so powerlifting was it. I just don't like to lose. And honestly, that's probably what took me so long to sign up for a meet, was like, I'm in Texas. There's a lot of really strong people here. I don't want to lose. And I didn't, but like it was that mindset that kind of held me back a little bit, because I couldn't get out of my own way long enough to actually sign up for a meet. And so when I did, I mean, like, the football guys were hyped. Like, they reposted me winning. I'd probably say half of them reposted it, which was awesome. But like, we have ongoing jokes that, like, I'm stronger than so and so on the team, or like some of the football coaches come up to me and they're like they'll bring a recruit and they'll be like, yeah, she's really strong. You better watch out. Like, she probably deadlifts more than you do. I'm like, okay, guys, we get it. Like, but I think it's helped with buy-in, but it's also like given me something to work towards, like, it's easy to just come in and after you've been training for so many years, just get tired of it, and it gives you a new goal to work towards. Speaking of goals going forward, I with the total that I had, I qualified for a national meet, and I probably won't do it until next July. I just missed the one, like, qualifying for the one this year by, I think, like a week, which is okay. I prefer to have more time. And the next time I'll probably do another meet before nationals, in next July. But regardless, the goal for nationals, to be competitive, is 1,000 pound total. So we had 891. We got 110 pounds to go, which doesn't sound like a lot for 3 lifts, but it's quite a bit. So we'll see if we can refine those and just continue to get stronger. But again, it gives me something to work towards and keeps me focused on lifting and coming in, and not just going through the motions.
No, that's awesome. I think the same way, like, you're not purposely going out to train or compete and just so that you can kind of see the buy-in, or not see the buy-in, but just take all those lessons and apply it to your athletes. It indirectly does it, because all the things, all the qualities that we kind of preach for our athletes, like you said, getting sleep, doing the proper recovery, all the things that we talk about with them, having goals, like being focused, leaving your stress at the door and coming in and like doing bit like this is business when you actually come in here to train for your sport. Like, those are all the things that like kind of re-energize you when you get to go and train yourself. And those are things that for you probably, like, on top of like helping with sanity and just kind of being part of your daily thing, that's a habit now that you've created. And to see
Right.
like the goals start to grow as you continue to train and kind of get, same with coaching, like you get more seasoned, you get more experience as you're powerlifting too, like those goals get bigger and you get even more focused, and you're driven even more so to obtain those goals and reach the new standards and heights. So those are cool. Those are good luck with all those. I know
Thank
that's
you.
that's going to be a fun thing to kind of keep pushing towards, and
Yeah.
join the 1,000 pound club and everything too. That's awesome.
Hopefully. I mean, we got to figure out where we're gonna add where we're gonna add some poundage to. Bench is probably a good place to start. That pause at the bottom, let me tell you, that takes probably, well, for me, it takes probably 10 pounds off my bench. But like, I know for some it could be like a bigger difference than that. So we're training that pause now, whereas before it wasn't till like 2 weeks before that I'm like, you know what, maybe we should add a little pause in there to kind of emulate what's going to happen come meet day. But yeah, like the thrill of competing, like it's a ton of fun to do. Like getting up on the platform and like all these people are staring at you to see if you're going to lift this weight or not. um and if you're setting a record, like the entire place goes wild. Like it's an awesome experience. It's an awesome environment. But we get close in the weight room, but we're not there. We're not at that volume just yet.
No, that's cool. No, that I can imagine that pause feels a lot longer when you're on the platform and the lights are on you. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a new thing when you're first starting off back in powerlifting. So no, that's a cool thing to chase, that thrill. Obviously, like competing in so many sports and now like really diving deep into powerlifting. Like it's cool to see someone that is just kind of going full bore with it and really enjoying those sort of things, the training side of it, the competitive side of it, like to the point where other people want to get involved too. That's cool. Like especially like the football players, like really being excited for your success the same way that when they're successful in their sport, they're successful in the weight room, like you get to emulate that stuff too. And it's cool that it
Right.
goes both ways.
Yeah. It's awesome. And I mean, like my soccer girls are like, we want to bench 165. Like it's funny because like when I first got here, I don't want to say they hated the weight room, but it was definitely not an enjoyable experience for most of them. And now like, I mean, we have girls coming in for like extra work, and it's not necessarily like a whole extra lift, but just like coming into stretch, coming into roll, coming into talk. Like they're more comfortable coming into the weight room than they were previously. Like my first semester, I hardly saw any of them. Um, and here we are going on my fourth, we're counting summer, we'll say fourth semester. But and they're coming in for extra work, and like they're out here flexing on the in the weight room, like in the weight room, and like we're getting it on video, and it's awesome to see. Like it's a complete transition or complete 180 of the team. And like it's just awesome to see those, like them feel strong and like want to look strong, if that makes sense.
No,
um
that makes sense. Obviously.
Compared to when we got here, and like they could care less about the weight room. They're like, we'll get there when we get there.
No, that culture shift is awesome to watch too, especially a team that was apprehensive about training or didn't like it for whatever reason, or I mean the countless reasons why. But that's another thing that is pretty cool too about coaching, like as a female strength coach, probably coaching female teams, is for them they see that's a different role model. That's someone that
Right.
they can kind of aspire to be. And it'd be different if it was Trevor or someone else on staff working. Not to say one's better than the other, but if Trevor comes in and Trevor's like, oh well, I can bench 350, and
Right.
he probably can't, but I'm just giving him a good bench number. But something like that, because for the girls that are coming in, that's not really attainable. That's just kind of like, oh,
Right.
that's impressive, that's cool. But to see like someone like a female strength coach like in that position, they're like, oh, that's awesome. Like I could reach that. Like that's something that my coach does that I want to do. It's a different feeling. And it's not to say that female sports should be matched up with female strength coaches and vice versa, like all the time. But
Right.
that's like having female on staff or having someone that's relatable for those athletes to either have conversations with or see. I think that's something that's really cool for them to emulate, and for them to want to aspire to be, or at least like be able to have conversations with. So that's one of the big benefits, definitely for, and that's why I'm an advocate for more people getting the profession too. So everybody has someone that they can kind of use as a role model too.
Yeah, definitely. Different personality types. Like not everyone is gonna, I'm not gonna appeal to everyone, and like Trevor's not gonna appeal to everyone. And so it's being able to have like, I feel like looking at our staff, we're a really diverse staff. And it's awesome because we each have like overall different demeanors. I mean, there's some similarities, but like when we're talking one-on-one with athletes, I think we approach it in different ways. And that's, I mean, like you said, I think it was in our conversation before we got started, whenever you hire someone, you don't want to hire 10 of you, you want to hire people that are diverse and different and have different mindsets, speak differently, coach differently, than you do, but also still have the same general goal, like at the end of the day, we're here for the athletes. Um, and that's kind of where we are as a staff. And it's awesome because like I said, or like you said, I'll appeal to, a soccer girl, but like because I'm lifting, but you know, Trevor might appeal to a golfer or a baseball guy better, whatever it is. Or vice versa. And I mean, like some of my soccer girls go in and talk to Trevor. Like some of his volleyball girls come in and talk to me, like it's awesome that we have that open line of communication with our athletes, regardless of who coaches them or what team they are. Like they're like, okay, I think I can relate most to this person on staff. Like I'll have a conversation with them, or like I have a soccer girl and she talks about life with me. She'll talk about faith with Coach Parker, and she talks about family, Cody Joe. For those of you that don't know, Cody Joe's Trevor's dog with Trevor. And so, each one of us have a different conversation with her, and it's awesome because she's able to do that. We have a diverse enough staff to where she can do that.
Yeah, that's awesome to have like underlying goals and like a set of like core values that everybody on the staff really like that sets the standard for everything else. Obviously, like one person's going to lead a program and like train the team, but for them to be athletes be able to confide in people for different reasons and develop and foster different relationships with them, like it doesn't need to be just your athletes going to you for everything. And to
Right.
have a staff that's all on the same page with those things, that's it's definitely a great thing to have for anyone that's ever going to be involved in the profession. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, so like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I've got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and maybe overtime at the end.
All
So
right.
you can go rapid fire, or you could take your time on any of them you want to kind of expand on. But are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession and biggest influence in powerlifting.
Um, biggest influence. We'll go biggest influence in powerlifting. Um, and I'd probably say these two individuals kind of go together. Probably Brian Carroll and Stuart McGill. And both of those was because like I had a back injury a year and a half ago. And like just hearing Brian Carroll's story, like if you're not aware, like he basically broke his sacrum in half and came back and was able to set a world record for squat. Um, which is crazy. Like he basically had a car on his back, a small car on his back. Like that's just wild to think about. But I mean, I was doing a ton of reading. I did like I was trying to self-diagnose, to be totally honest, which didn't work. Um, and was in denial about it. But it's like I had to take a step back from training, and sometimes that's kind of what you have to do, in a training standpoint with working with athletes and as an individual. Um, being able to look at it and be like, okay, my lift wasn't strong, or I did this, and this wrong, and that's why this happened, being able to pick the pieces up and be like, okay, I put the puzzle together wrong the first time, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix it. And the picture's going to come through. And I like, if I hadn't hurt my back, I wouldn't have changed the way that I train. Like I used to not warm up at all, which look in hindsight is crazy. Like I'd go 135, 185, 225, like that would be my warm up for everything. Like it's just crazy to go back and look at different things or different faults in my previous training and how that's shaped me today. Strength and conditioning. I'm gonna go with some of the mentors that I've had up to this point. Um, the staff that I worked with at UNLV, both staffs, they were awesome. And honestly, that's I feel like when I was most impressionable. So the first time it was Coach Manny and um, Coach Cano, and the second time it was Coach File Garcia and Coach Diamond. And again, both of those staffs really shaped kind of my development and how I am now as a coach. Um, I got some of my philosophies from them, but also like Coach Manny had a was really detail oriented with all of his stuff. Um, and he took the time to like sit down with us as interns and explain it because the setup was really intricate from time to time. And like I learned the most about Excel as an intern. Um, like working with Garcia and helping him out with Catapult and then working with Cano. Like I remember when I first started interning, I had no clue how to set up a spreadsheet. Like the Cano was like, "Hey, I need weights in a spreadsheet." And I remember it took me 45 minutes to like put together a spreadsheet with body weights in it. Like it's crazy to look back on it and be like, "Wow, that's where we started," you know? But I think they heavily influenced the coach that I am today. And then I can't speak highly enough of the staff that I work with now. Like Trevor and Parker are awesome to work for. Um, like Trevor's gonna overhype me till the end of time, like in public, of course. But like to me, he's gonna be like, still not strong enough. So like being able to have that kind of relationship now, knowing that like my employer is going to have my back, my boss is going to have my back, even if I mess up, um, is an awesome feeling to have. And in strength and conditioning, it's not always the case. So I know there's a long list of influences, but those
No,
are those are them.
no, that's those are the people that kind of shaped you. So mentors are huge along the process. So those are definitely special people to keep in contact with and kind of cherish as you get to the point in your career and you start like actually reminiscing and thinking about those things. So no, those
Yeah.
that's awesome to have those people in your life and continue to have them there too. So what can you be found doing when you're not actually in the weight room training and getting ready to compete or coaching? What are some of your hobbies that are kind of unrelated to strength and conditioning?
Um, I have a husky. His name's Max. He is 6 years old, and I'm an obnoxious dog mom in my free time. Um, if like on my phone, my pictures are of my dog and of weight room strength and conditioning things. Like if it's not me lifting, it's a team lift. And then if it's not one of those two things, it's my dog. Um, and so I mean, he's pretty active. Huskies are kind of nuts. And so we'll go like I used to take him on walks in Alabama. We used to go different trails and walk the Tennessee River and just he loves to swim. So honestly, like he's gotten me out of the house a whole lot more than I would have gotten myself out of the house if I had not had a dog. Um, I semi outdoorsy, camping's not at all my thing, so it's not gonna happen. Glamping's really not my thing. Like if there's not a shower, that's not it. But like general daily outdoor things, like I said, we'll go on walks. I'll take him, we'll find some water, we go to parks. He makes me be social in that regard. Like I wouldn't talk to my neighbors if I didn't have a dog. Um, outside of that, I'm like somewhat creative. And so like there's like I'll do different wood signs, different crafts, different DIY stuff. Like those wine and canvas things. I used to do those all the time with my mom back home. And yeah, outside of that, if I'm not doing one of those two things or training, I'm probably sleeping. That's really about it. There's a lot going on, so I can't say there's a ton of free time, but
Right. No, the Huskies will keep you busy for sure. So he
For
probably does a
sure.
good job of that.
He
Hey,
does.
if you weren't involved in actually doing coaching, like we know like what you were doing before, looking at physical therapy and everything, what do you think you would be doing as a profession if it wasn't coaching? And if it wasn't powerlifting, what sport do you think you might have picked up?
Um, if I wasn't coaching, it definitely wouldn't be retail and it definitely wouldn't be food. People are way too picky about the way that they want their food, and that's not it's not for me. Like this can't touch this. I'm allergic to this. That's not. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it with a smile. Let's put it that way. Um, Same with retail. Like I mean, I did retail for a lot of years, and just some of the customer complaints that you would get, you're like, that doesn't even make any sense. But like, I definitely agree. Everyone should work in either retail or food, some sort of customer service job because like it gives you a different appreciation. Um, like whenever I go into stores, like I face whatever product I took because like that was something that I did in retail. Um, and you're just nicer to the people that are working at the store. But if I wasn't coaching, honestly, I think I would do something like more psychology based, whether that be a counselor of some sort. Like I think being an addiction counselor would actually be really cool. Um, I minored in psychology for my undergrad. And so like abnormal psych, like all those different uh abnormal behavior patterns, like I find that really interesting because a lot of it's not necessarily the way that you're born, it's triggered by something, whether that's previous trauma or whether that's a chemical imbalance. It's not just something that happens, there's a reason. And so I think that's always been kind of interesting, the psychological aspect of training, the psychological aspect of just like why are we addicted to this, like why did you choose to cope this way, um and so I think if I wasn't coaching, that's probably what I'd be doing. It's also a little edgy, like I don't want to say there's not safety in it. There is some safety in it, but you know, most normal people are like, nah, I don't think I want to deal with addicts. But everyone has a story, and if you could help make an impact in someone's life, like and get them coping in a better way, or healing previous trauma, like that's really cool. And I think that's probably what I'd get more into if I wasn't coaching or doing anything in the athletic realm. Um, if I didn't get into powerlifting, what would I be doing? So we played beach volleyball with football, and I mean, like that's pretty cool. Like I could see myself doing that. Am I very good? No, probably not. But if you practice hard enough, I think I could be good at it. Um, so yeah, we'll say beach volleyball. It's also very like low impact. Like it's not like on a wood floor where you got to dive across, and yeah, no, that um you're in the sand. So it's a little easier. Like I'll dive for a ball in the sand. I'm not diving for a ball on wood.
I like it. Hey, so setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what is playing on the radio? Like, what's your genre or best training music? And what is your hands down best post training meal?
So training music is really all over the place. More recently we did, and it was just something that we did like randomly. We called it Fiesta Friday, and we played a ton of just Latin music, and it's like kind of like Latin club music. So like you really don't realize how great Sean Paul was until you haven't heard him in 10 years. And so like we've been listening to that a little bit more frequently. I used to only live to like rock music. Like A Day to Remember is my favorite band, and so it was always like something around that genre. But yeah, it really varies. Like unless I'm intend to max out or it's really early in the morning, I'm really not paying too much attention to what's playing. Um, but yeah, those are I'd have to say like the two usual go-tos. Post-training meal. Again, I don't have like a set one. Being in Texas, you can get tacos everywhere. Um, so Torchy's Tacos is like right up the street from me, and it's really kind of dangerous. They have a drive-through, and I can order on my phone. So if I'm on my way home from work and I don't want to cook anything, Torchy's it is. But outside of that, I can't say I have a set post-workout meal. I love burgers, like a good burger and fries. That's a solid go-to. Um, I'm not really a pizza. I mean, like I like pizza, but like it's not usually a go-to post-workout meal. A burger and fries is usually pretty safe, but sometimes tacos,
Mix
just
it
because I'm
up.
in Texas.
Yeah, mix
Yeah,
it up.
gotta have tacos in Texas.
I like it. Hey, so last one I have for you for overtime. What is the most valuable piece of advice you've received? And if you want to share and you remember from who?
Um, I I want to say I heard it in my time at UNLV, and I can't remember if one of the coaches on staff had said it, one of the strength coaches on staff had said it, or if it was like a podcast that I'd listened to. But the first time I heard it was when I was there, and it was how you do one thing is how you do everything. And like it's resonated with me because if you think about it, like I look back on my athletic career and like I've always been really hard on myself. I've always like overthought about everything that I've done. I've always tried to be the best at anything that I did. Um, I've always had that overachiever kind of mindset. And so looking at that and then looking at kind of where I am now, like the same principles still apply. And then if you look at any I remember where this one came from. It wasn't exactly a saying as much as it was like a story because we were getting a new weight room when I was at UNLV. And the first strength coach that I worked under, Coach Manny, he was telling the guys, like, we're about to get a new weight room and they didn't pick something up right. And so he's like, how are we going to move into a new weight room when you expect anything to change? You know, if you're not going to pick up after yourself now, like that new weight room is going to be a shiny new car for 2 weeks, and then you're going to be back to putting trash in it or putting stuff on the floor. And again, it just goes back to how you do one thing's how you do everything. Like if you constantly throw weights on the ground and it's not a standard to pick the weights up and make the weight room a solid presentation to possible recruits coming in or just the next person on staff coming in the next morning, like that's how you do everything. That's how you go through life. If you don't finish through the line, you won't finish through the line in life. And so like that's something that's kind of resonated with me. And if there's something that I'm like, I just really don't want to do that, I'm like, all right, well, just know that's how you're gonna do everything, or like I'm notorious for procrastinating. Even with my master's work and my thesis work, like I still procrastinate, unfortunately. And those habits are hard to break, but it is attainable. You can break them. And so just keeping that thought process in mind, how you do one thing's how you're going to do everything is a good reminder. And it's also, do I really want to do everything like that? Is that what I want to be a representation of my work ethic and how I do certain things? Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of stuck with me and something that I bring up to myself all the time. I'm like, all right, well, like you're allowing that to be a representation of yourself. Um, yeah, I can't remember who said it, unfortunately, but
No, I like it. I like how you said it too. It's a good representation of of what you're going to do, even if that's the one glimpse of something you get, or that's the one conversation you have with someone, or seeing trash in the front of the weight room when you go in, if that's a snapshot and representation of what's to come, like that's you, like some people are judged based off of that, and it's a good
Yeah.
self accountability, self reminder, like to kind of be disciplined. And yeah, people could take it overboard, but it's a good reminder more so to really kind of hold yourself to a higher standard, hold yourself to your goals. So no, that's awesome. Hey, I appreciate you coming on today as you gear up for nationals and your first 1,000-pound total and everything. If anybody has any questions or want to see like your progress as you gear up for nationals next year, where can they kind of get a hold of you or follow along kind of that journey?
Instagram's probably one of the best ways. I don't post a whole lot of like actual posts on Instagram. I'll do stories. I go in phases with social media. But yeah, I'll go, in bursts or in spurts with posting. And I'm sure I'll post, like I noticed I posted more leading up to the meet than I have afterwards. And don't worry guys, I've still been lifting, but I just I haven't posted it. It hasn't been anything noteworthy, no PRs, but maybe August 5th when we have our in-house powerlifting meet. We'll see. But yeah, that's probably the best place. I'm usually good about replying to DMs, assuming, I follow you back and I can see them. If it's a hidden one, it gets lost. But email is another good way. Oh yeah, my Instagram's it's at Hales, HALE, 3 S's, 13. And then email is probably the other best way to get in touch with me. I check my email pretty regularly. So HER026@shsu.edu. I have a Twitter. I don't use it. So I would not message me on Twitter or reach out to me on Twitter because I don't ever really go on it. That's, I think,
Perfect.
my only platforms. Those are the only ones that I use. If there's another one out there, probably don't use it.
It's probably not yours too then. Yeah.
That's happened before. So there was a fake Instagram going around for a little while, and I was like, don't like that's not me, I swear, guys. It was questionable content.
We'll put the right links
in.
Yeah,
yes,
we'll tag the right links so everybody knows. But yeah, save those PRs for the platform, and for Sam Houston's weight room. So I appreciate you coming on today, Haley. It's been awesome to talk to you more and to kind of hear how Trevor's treating his fellow assistants. So I appreciate you coming on today, and good luck with the start of season and training coming up pretty soon.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on. It's been awesome, and this was a great opportunity.
Of course. Thanks for coming on.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.